So this is the view from my bedroom window, and I get a lot of peace from it, especially when it's raining like this, and I guess I just wanted to share that with you. 'Cause, I mean, look at how gorgeous this is. And yeah, that is corn growing out there. This bit of footage, I think, is actually from last year, sometime last summer. Oh, what a simpler time. But anyway, what I have for you guys today, again, hello, my name is Sade. Welcome back to Dead and Crafts. If you are new here, this is just kind of my personal, but also public space to share the crafty things that I do. Mostly I do dollery paints and customs, but I also do other crafty things like paint little toys or sew things. And today, some sculpting. This episode, I am making something very special that I had a lot of fun working on. So I've already mentioned before that I really want to get into sculpting small figures, or just like little toys, and most of my sculpting experience has been solely with doll modifications, with adding things like horns, building up muscle, making them anatomically correct. But I haven't sculpted anything from like beginning to end, and so this is my first venture into that, and I chose to do what I thought would be a fairly simple project, but I chose this adorable, lovable character from this really talented artist on Twitter that I follow. The character's name is Gimo. He is this oh so precious warrior dwarf from the creator. Okay, I'm gonna say this wrong. In my mind, I just call him Krumpo. His full tag is at Krumparrian. Krumparrian. I don't know how to say it. I'm terrible with names. But please go check them out. I have links in the show notes for all the pieces of art that I am including in this. I did get their permission to put that in there. But they do these wonderful little comics with the character Gimo, of his just these great little adventures that he goes on, and the comics are so well done, and the art is fabulous. Not just in these comics, but Krumpo's art in general is on point. Character design are just very original, and I just really am a fan. I'm trying not to gush too much, but definitely go check out those links, check out his art. A lot of talent there, and I am very thankful that they allowed me to make this video so I could share this project with you guys, because I am really happy with the results. But yeah, so this is the character that I chose. I thought it would be a good test in like symmetry and getting things even and well shaped, and that ended up being more of a struggle, but we'll get into that. So let's just get to the video before I ramble on anymore. So the first thing I did for this was I took this salvaged material from packaging. It's just brown paper, and I crushed it up into just the general shapes for the figure, because I wasn't going to work with epoxy sculpt because that's too heavy and it is expensive, and that is better for smaller modifications on dolls. So for this I decided to go with air dry paper clay that I have worked with a bit before. I think I used it for like Toga's mask and the past, I forget, whatever. But yeah. Still though, if I had made all of Gimo in just the clay, he would have been very heavy. He actually still turned out kind of heavy, but I'll explain why later. But to reduce the weight and to reduce the amount of clay I had to use, I started with the paper, building up those forms, and then I kind of refined those shapes with tinfoil. And I am sorry again if the camera shakes or if it gets a little blurry because I get too close to the camera. When I was working on this, I was still figuring out where the best place to put the camera is. I have gotten a new camera mount after finishing this project, so hopefully newly recorded videos after this will look much better, but I still have a bunch of old footage that won't be the greatest. I'm sorry. I'm trying, okay? So I don't know if you can tell, but some of the shapes that I made, my base shapes, started out a little bigger than when I started applying the first layers of the paper clay, and that was probably where my first big mistake is in when I made those base shapes. I didn't have any kind of size reference. I was just kind of going off of memory and off of what I thought in my head was the size that I was going for. I should have on paper drawn out Gimo to the size that I wanted the figure to be. That way I could reference that as I built the shapes initially. But I guess I was just too excited to start, because once I started working on the head, I just made the body kind of match in size based off the reference I was going with, and he ended up maybe 3 times larger. The figure ended up 3 times larger than the size I originally intended. So he's a big boy. But that's okay, because I think for my first figure, even though his details are fairly simple, the smaller you sculpt, the harder it is to get all those details. So in the end, it was fine. Anyway, here I am twisting some wires that I'm going to use as the base for his horns to kind of help me figure out where those go. Before I put those in, though, I did work on his face for a while first, just kind of figuring out placement of the eyes, and where once I had that down, it would be easier to make sure that his horns were level on each side and weren't like too high or too low. His horns was definitely where I made another mistake, because I started with wire and then I built that up with more tinfoil. I don't think I have footage of that part where I built the horns up, and I'm sorry. But I completely underestimated how big his horns are, the girth of them. And so I didn't build up enough tinfoil before I started applying the clay, and then as I was working on this, Krumpo actually did start putting out a character sheet for Gimo, and when I started comparing that to what I had in my hands, I was like, oh, these horns are not thick enough. And so his head, he's very top heavy now. Oops. So, you know what? We're learning. It's our first sculpt. I'll do better next time. But yeah, I think the face probably took the most. Actually, no, that's a lie. The horns definitely took the most time. His face was a lot of fun to work on because the cartoonish style of just the large eyes and figuring out how to translate all that into 3D was definitely an interesting experience. I definitely chose, I think, a good character for my first time, and that is something that I really enjoyed, was just kind of figuring out how to translate all those details. But once that was more or less figured out, I think getting the horns even on both sides was definitely the biggest challenge, because I think I ended up with one horn leaning a little further back than the other, and so trying to fix that when the clay had already set was tricky. But in my third, and probably my biggest mistake, was the neck joint that I abandoned. So I had the initial idea, and I actually thought of this like partway through, to give him an articulated neck, just very simple articulation where he could turn his head side to side. And what I should have done, I think, I don't know, I'm gonna have to try this next time I want to attempt this, is I should have built the full figure and then cut his head off. so then I could drill a hole for the peg. But what I did is I just kind of stuffed this wooden dowel that I used for my peg into the body, and I tried to shape the joint around it, and I couldn't get it even on both ends, and I decided in the end to forgo that because it was going to take a lot more time to finish him if I really wanted to commit to that. I did keep the dowel in there in the end to support the weight of his head. So again, learning from my mistakes. After getting him more or less to the point where I wanted, it was just a whole lot of refining the sculpt, a whole lot of sanding. You can tell in this clip he's a lot smoother because I've sanded him down multiple times at this point, and it was, I think, 4 or 5 sessions of sanding. 4 or 5 sessions of just like sitting on the porch, sanding him for a good 3 or 4 hours, bringing him back in, refining the sculpts, adding a bit more clay here, evening out a little more there, going back out to sand him, bringing him back in, just getting him to a point where I was really happy. And there was a point actually where I had to be like, okay, I have till the end of the week to get him to where I want, because then I'm moving on to the next step, which was priming and painting. I used a Mr. Surfacer for his final layer. I did sand that down a bit as well to get him all super nice and smooth. And then from there, finally got to painting, and I wanted it to be as smooth as possible, so I worked in thin layers of acrylic paint and watered down layers of acrylic paint and just kind of built up that black color for his body and then the white for the horns. I have to say though that there is just something really satisfying about a perfectly black matte surface. I don't know. His horns though definitely were a challenge in trying to get an even, consistent white coat and also keeping cat hair out of the paint. But then once the base colors were done, I think I did his nose first, his cute little button nose, and I started sketching in his eyes the way I would like a regular doll repaint. I used the character sheet as my reference to get his eyes shaped correctly, and then once I was happy with the sketch, I just filled that in with some more acrylic paint. And then for his emblem, I sketched that in with pencil too, and like with his eyes, it was just a process of filling in the color, refining the edges, and just taking my time with it. It's actually probably as fun as the sculpting part was. Just those final details as you kind of see it all come together are probably the most satisfying part of the process. But yep, once he was fully painted, he got... I can't remember what sealant I used now. I want to say I used matte varnish for the horns and body and his face, and his eyes got some layers of Tamiya gloss so they would be nice and shiny. And then that's it. He was all done. He is a little top heavy. So if I bump the table too hard, he might topple over, but for the most part, he's a sturdy boy, and I'm very, very proud of him and how I was able to translate him from Krumbo's gorgeous 2D work to the 3D sculpted version, and And yeah, just really enjoyed my time working on him. Seeking new adventures, the short but brave dwarf Gimo has set out into the mysterious Ram woods, a place where very few have traveled and from which many have not returned. What perilous dangers could our hero encounter? The woods have grown silent, and the brush is still. What could be lurking unseen? Look out, dear Gimo! Who is this monster rushing upon you? It is the father of Depravite's Ravity! Take caution, hero. There is little known about this fiendish-looking demon. What's this? It seems our hero has befriended his foe. The adventure continues, Gimo with his new comrade. Together, they overcome any challenge thrown at them. Leave it to the warm-hearted Gimo to win over even the most twisted of characters. Where will our brave hero go next?